borders, we put life-saving medical aid first. In over 70 countries around the world, the need for aid knows no borders. So neither does our work. Help us put people first, put action first, put aid first. Donate today. At Doctors Without Borders, we put life-saving medical aid first. In over 70 countries around
Hey, what is going on? I am Matt O'Leary, gonna be hanging out with you for another episode of the Jet Report. I am excited to get into today's show. We're gonna be talking about a BS rumor. We're also gonna be getting into your comments, your questions. We'll talk about last minute preparation for this game against the Seattle Seahawks coming up on Sunday. I cannot wait for that game. Also, this stream and the Jet Report is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Use my promo code Matt. The link is down below in the description of this video to join and sign up. You can play daily fantasy, all kinds of different fantasy games on there. My favorite thing to do on Underdog Fantasy, I've been having so much fun doing this, by the way, is the head-to-head matchup where it's like who's going to come out with more passing yards or rushing yards or their higher or lower numbers. Those are a ton of fun. Get in on the action. They're doing a 100% match deposit bonus up to $100 if you use my code and link. So all that is down below in the description. Okay, so you might be wondering, Matt, what the hell are you talking about with this stuff going on these rumors? What rumor are you talking about? And I don't know if my share screen is going to work. No, it's a black screen, so we're going to ignore that momentarily. Instead, I'll just read off to you what it is, because I'm sure you guys have heard of it. Jason La Canfora, excuse me, of the Washington Post had this to say about Woody Johnson contemplating potential changes. Here's what a high-ranking official had to say about the situation. This is killing owner Woody Johnson. Trust me, I know him well. All that booing is driving him crazy. He already wasn't really sold on this coach. He was going to want LaFleur out and some changes to the staff, he can't help himself. Weren't they 6-3 at the bye? And now they're getting booed out of their own stadium at Christmas. I'm telling you, something is going to happen there. By the way, there was Clint Neal on Twitter tweeted at Connor Hughes and Zach Blatt, who they both cover the team. Connor Hughes for SNY, Zach Blatt for The Athletic. He tweets, any truth behind this Woody Johnson not liking Salah rumor? Hughes says 0. And then Zach follows it up with, now, if you were asking if it's true that I don't like Connor, you might get a different answer, which is really funny. They have a nice little banter back and forth. But this idea or this notion that this guy, Jason La Conforna, knows anything about this is it's all speculation. It's all hearsay. It drives me nuts with this rumor. And yes, there's a big, I know the comments are going to be coming. Well, there's a big game on Sunday. Shouldn't you be talking about that? Yeah, we're going to get into that, believe me. But I saw this floating around on the internet. I saw Ryan from Jets Talk 24/7 do a video on it. And I don't put any stock into it at all based on everything we've seen from this team over the last decade to finally have some sense of stability that they just really need to figure out the quarterback position and the rest of the roster and the coach and the GM. They feel like they have something good here. To pull the plug on that seems incredibly silly. Now, if this was maybe a few years ago where they had the different reporting structure where both the coach and the GM reported upwards to the owner, then maybe I'd be slightly more concerned. But to Woody Johnson's credit, I think ever since he's come back, he's kind of stayed out of it, the football stuff for the most part. He really has. He's let Joe Douglas do his thing. He's let Robert Saleh do his thing. And I'm sorry, I just don't buy that this guy from the Washington Post has any insight onto what is actually going on in the building at One Jets Drive. I don't believe it for a second. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm the silly one for, not looking into this too much or glossing over this, but I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I really don't. With the number of awful coaches that they've been through and awful situations and then just the turnover, and to finally have something that you feel relatively confident in, I think it'd be so silly if they actually pulled the plug on it. I don't think they do. And again, they haven't been perfect. They obviously at 7-8, they have work to do, and there's still an outside prayer for a playoff spot. And I get all that, but everyone cries about this team never having any sort of stability and that there's too much roster turnover and there's too much turnover in general. That would be a prime example of it if Woody Johnson pulled the plug. And I don't buy for a second that this is going to happen. So I just wanted to get my brief thoughts on that out there. It's as I said, it's very, very silly. I don't put any validity into it. I don't put any stock into it. This guy seems to have an agenda. Supposedly doesn't really like Woody Johnson for who he worked for, the being the ambassador to England during the last presidency. He ranked Robert Saleh the worst head coach of the 2021 coaching cycle. So there is obviously there seems to be some sort of bias. Again, I'm not really putting much stock into it. So with that, let's get into your comment questions. We're going to go through the chats. If you want yours to jump the line, send in a super chat. You could also join. You can hit the join button down below. And become a member of the channel. It's another way to support. You get a nice little logo next to your name for these live streams. It's a lot of fun, and I appreciate you guys supporting me. But let's go to the live chat right now. E-Man is going to get us started. He says, Jets have a bright future ahead. I agree. I absolutely agree that the future is pretty bright with this Jets team. And I don't think making any sort of major changes to the coaching staff and front office is a wise decision. Christopher Sullivan says, Uncle Rico and Mike White next year. I love it. That'd be great. Jets Unleashed. We're talking quarterbacks in here today, I guess. Says, I say Minshew, White, and Carr next year and see who wins between the three. All right. I think that'd be a pretty expensive quarterback room. I don't know if you're able to bring back Mike White if you're trading for a Derek Carr just due to the cost. Now, maybe they cut Carr and you're able to sign him as a free agent, and it's not going to be as costly, but bringing back both of those guys. Um, Nick W says no Carr. He got benched. He got benched to preserve his trade value, not necessarily for poor play. He was a top 10 to 12 quarterback last year. This year, maybe not as much, but I would still say a middle of the pack, top 16 quarterback in the NFL. Matt Robinson says LaFleur, Calabrese probably gone unless Zach Wilson, only quarterback on their contract after next week, going to hire new offensive coaching staff to work with Zach Wilson. Calabrese can't do the job. I don't know if I buy that. Yes, I understand that it is probably easier to move on from the OC and the offensive coaching staff than it is a number 2 overall pick, but I think that would be a mistake. I think it would be a mistake to give up on this coaching staff and to have that much turnover. Because again, we always talk about with this team that they roll over or run through quarterbacks, coaches, general managers all too quick. It feels like you finally have something good here going, and to pull the plug on it, I think would be short-sighted, if you ask me. JD Jets says Mike White going undefeated in 2023. I'll see you boys after the second Super Bowl. Wow. I love the confidence. I hope that's the case. That'd be fantastic. Ryan Garcia follows that up and says, let's just say there is a bit of truth to that. Is Salas such a loyal guy that if he was told to fire Michael LaFleur, he'd say peace, knowing he'd have other suitors climbing all over themselves to bring him in? No, I don't think so. They came up together in San Francisco. I get that, but Robert Saleh knows there's only so many of these coaching gigs to go around. I don't think he would potentially risk losing a head coaching job in that capacity. I don't buy it. Mindy Adams says if LaFleur goes, then JD better contact Frank Reich immediately. Yeah, that's someone who I think is going to be someone who's going to be an option as an OC. For this upcoming year. I like what he's able to do at the quarterback position. He was a very good quarterback coach. I don't know if he's going to go all the way back down to being a quarterback coach after he was just a head coach. So it would probably likely have to be for an offensive coordinator position. That being said, I don't think they are firing Mike LaFleur after this year. Is that Green Truth said Brian Costello came out and said Woody was never a fan of Zach Wilson? Is that true? I don't know if I didn't see it, but then again, I don't follow Costello stuff that closely. So I'll have to look into that. Anthony S says, imagine if White ends up being the franchise guy. I'd love it. That'd make life a hell of a lot easier on you because he's here in the building. Yes, he's a UFA, so you got to give him a contract, but I don't think he's going to be, a $30+ million a year guy right now after this year. So then you'd be getting really good value on a franchise quarterback for the next couple of years. Yeah, I like this one from Christopher Sullivan. He says quarterback talk will dominate until something is done. Hopefully White can silence all that talk. Yeah, that would make things a lot easier if you ask me. Him coming out and playing really good ball, leading the Jets to the playoffs, maybe winning a playoff game, that could completely change the conversations that we're having about Jimmy G or Carr or Rodgers or any of those guys. Yeah, I like what Paul says here. When was the last time the Jets retained the GM, head coach, OC, and DC for 3 consecutive seasons? Jets are building something and need to let it ride out for at least another year. I agree with that. There's way too much roster turnover and just head coaching and coaching job turnover in general. The Jets brought back pretty much the same staff. They massively improved this year, and with better quarterback play, I think they deserve their shot with better quarterback play. So I'm with you. John Finnegan, he's been a member of the channel for 2 months now. He sent in his chat. You could become a member of the crew. Like John says, the reality is the general public outside of our fans love the idea of us being a train wreck. Bigger dumpster fires don't have the microscope we do. That's true. For example, I was just thinking this to myself semi recently, uh, just because of the market size and failures and stuff like that. I Now tell me if I'm wrong, and I think you guys will if we're all Jet fans here. It feels like the Miami Dolphins get a pass for being an abomination for a really long time. Their last playoff win, I believe, is 2001, and they made the playoffs in 2016, 2008. Let's do that for a second. Year by year. I see the super chat in here. I will grab that in 1 second. I just want to finish my thought on this. Yeah. Their last playoff win came in the 2001 season, I believe. Scroll it down. No, they lost in 2001. I apologize. So it goes back even further than that. 2000. They beat the Indianapolis Colts 23-17. Their last playoff win was in 2000. I feel like they get a free pass. Here we go. Mr. Marcus 520. Thank you for your super chat. We're going to grab that right now. He says, rumor has it, if Sean Payton is putting together a staff, why not make a run at him? Some of our losses have been because of poor coaching. Kind of like what this whole kind of stream has been on so far is the Jets feel like they are finally putting something really, really good together here. And to pull the plug on it and to pretty much give Sean Payton full control, because that's what you'd be doing. He wouldn't be coming in here and saying, "Oh, I'm going to play second fiddle to Joe Douglas." You're basically saying, Sean Payton, we're giving you the keys to the franchise. And while I really like Sean Payton a lot as a coach, again, it goes back to just making a change to make a change. And you're right. Some of the losses have been because of poor coaching, but a majority have been due to just inability to play at the quarterback position. I'm gonna say you could maybe put the Detroit loss on bad coaching, but other than that, there's either a lack of execution, bad quarterback play. The two losses, I mean, week 1, the Ravens, the defense played good, offense was abysmal. Week 3, the defense really stunk. They kicked it into gear. Both Patriots games was quarterback play. Detroit was a mix of quarterback play and coaching. The Minnesota, I would say, is execution, dropping a 4th down pass in the end zone from Braxton Berrios. Then the Buffalo game, I would say, would be mostly due to injuries and some coaching there, I guess. Jacksonville wasn't coaching, it was quarterback play. JD Jet says would have to trade for Peyton, and I'm not convinced Breeze wasn't the biggest pet of their success. Hard pass from me. Yeah, I mean, Sean Payton is a legendary coach for what he was able to do in New Orleans. He won a Super Bowl, was really, really good for a very long time there. I agree with, there was another comment from Green Truth says he wants a dome or warm weather. I don't see him going there. Maybe, like, I don't even see Denver. He's going to stick himself with the Russell Wilson contract. I don't think so. I'm not sure where he ends up, but I don't think it's the Jets. I don't think it's Denver. We'll have to wait and see. JD Jet says, I feel you. The defensive turnaround is enough for me to believe in Salah, and I'd rather use our pick to beef up the O-line than go after another coach. Agree. I think to me, in my opinion, the obvious, but you can make cases for other positions. I would think you're spending your first round pick on an offensive tackle. We're going to really dive deep into those. Paris Johnson's probably my favorite. There's a chance that he goes before the Jets are picking. I talked about it on the stream yesterday. This class at the tackle position kind of reminds me of the 2020 class when the Jets drafted Mekhi Becton. And there were 4 guys who you were pretty confident that were going in the first round. But everyone seemed to have different order or different rankings of them, and that was Becton, Wills, Wirfs, and Andrew Thomas. And they, like I said, they all kind of went in different, like people, some people had Andrew Thomas as their number one. People had Andrew Thomas as the number four. Some people were higher on Mekhi Becton than others. Some loved Jedrick Wills. Others liked Wirfs. And we know how that ended up playing out. So this kind of is reminiscent of that to me, in my opinion. Hank says, "Forget going after a quarterback with Raiders in rebuild mode. Is there any world we stick with White and go get Adams? Imagine Brees, Adams, Wilson, more in the slot." I would say highly, highly unlikely. I don't think he was asked to be traded to the Raiders or wanted to go to the Raiders to play with his buddy Derek Carr. Now, if you were to tell me there was going to be some blockbuster where you get Adams and Carr, I don't think that is very likely. But if that was going to be the case, would they do that? Maybe, but then I would think Elijah Moore is in the package going the other way. I don't think you're looking to bring in Devontae Adams. As fun as that would be, Garrett Wilson's your number one receiver. Elijah Moore is a very good number two. You need depth beyond that, but I don't think it's Devontae Adams. Pete G says, playing Geno with all the quarterback controversy seems like bad mojo. I think the football gods will be against us. What, were they supposed to stick it out and wait for Geno to figure it out in year 10? I don't know. I've seen a lot of Pete Carroll, Geno, Jamal Adams revenge games, but what about Robert Saleh revenge game? He was a coach there for a while. What about Dwayne Brown revenge game or DJ Reed revenge game? I think that can go both ways. So the Jets are the better defense, and I think the defense is going to be a big part in a low-scoring win for the Jets today, or this week, rather. John O'Sullivan says every team loads the box first and second downs against the Jets. Then the Jets usually run right into it. That won't be the case as much with Mike White at the quarterback position. I don't think the teams are going to be able to do that. With his threat to throw the ball, they'll have to back off a little bit here. So I don't buy that one. Vinster says Jason Morrow for head coach. Yes, that would be my pick. Mindy asks, how do you rate Carr, Love, Tannehill, and Minshew as possible targets? I would probably go in those four. I would say Carr is the best option. I'd probably go Minshew, to Tannehill, and Love. Love is such an unknown that I don't think if you're trading for an unknown, that is a little bit scary. Carr's the best of that bunch. I don't love Tannehill. Minshew is okay, but I think Carr is probably the best option of that bunch. JD Jet says, have a feeling Zach ends up a backup on the Vikings or Chiefs. Would give him the best shot to be successful in like 3 or 4 years after being a backup on a solid team with weapons. I don't know about the Chiefs, maybe the Vikings or the Rams, a team with an older quarterback that, maybe is going to give it a couple more years, kick at the can, and then maybe could be looking for a potential replacement option. I would say Green Bay if they didn't have Jordan Love. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other places on the fly. The Rams seem to make a lot of sense. Yeah, that's, I think, the obvious one. Good stat from our guy, Brian Sternbach. He always comes in with these incredible stats. I don't know how his mind gets there, but Richard Todd and Ken O'Brien are the only two quarterbacks to face the Steelers multiple times. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Charles says, why trade Zach when he's fully paid for? Why not sit him the whole next season so he can learn how to be an NFL quarterback? I don't get the rush to let him walk. His trade value is really, really low, so you'd be selling at an all-time low. And His guaranteed money goes up a little bit, but it's going to cost you something to get out of that. There might be a way that you can convince me Zach's on the team next year as a backup, not a starter. Um, Maybe they still try to develop him. Maybe a team gets desperate and wants to trade for him in the season if there's an injury. He could still be here if there's a veteran option quarterbacking. Mr. D sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, Mr. D. He says, if the Jets sign Tom Brady, I will hate the Jets. That's going to be, if they were to do something like that, that would be the ultimate. I don't know. I feel like that'd be the test of how your Jets fandom, right? Because yes, I want the Jets to win a Super Bowl and be, incredible team. But I feel like if they were to win a Super Bowl, the story wouldn't be, oh my God, the Jets finally got their Super Bowl. The story would be Tom Brady finally got the Jets their Super Bowl. And that just feels cheap. I don't know. I don't love it. Paul Samuel says Jets are 7-1 this season when they run for 90 plus yards, 0-7 when they don't. If Bam and MC can combine for that, the Jets are in good shape. Yeah, I agree. I think both have a bounce back game. The Seattle Seahawks really struggle against the run. I'll give you some numbers. They are, please hold, 31st in rushing attempts against, 31st in rushing yards against, 29th in rushing touchdowns against, and 25th in rushing yards per attempt. Good point here from Craig. Says Tom Brady can't be a Jet. Number 12 is retired. Great point. He won't come. Mom says, I know people are going to knock me on this one, but if Stafford is going back to the Rams, what about Mayfield? He does fit our system, right? Yeah, I just kind of don't want the extra stuff that comes with him. I was a big fan of him coming out. I thought he would be better on the field than what he kind of has been. He had a really good rookie year, an okay third year. Second year was bad. Fourth year wasn't good. He was injured though. Fifth year wasn't good, got cut. And then with arguably a top 3 play caller has been very, very good. I would hope that they would go for someone with a little bit of a higher floor than Baker Mayfield, because that could really bottom out and be bad. Oh, interesting one from Paul. The Cardinals could be a surprise team in the Zach Wilson sweepstakes. Okay. I like that option a lot. I could see that. Matt Robinson says Mike White going to throw 60 times for 0 touchdowns. Oof. I hope not. I hope he doesn't throw 60 times. I think 30 to 35 feels like the sweet spot. I think he's going to throw around 250 to 275 yards and 1 or 2 passing touchdowns, I'll say. Vinny and the Jets says, Matt, I'm definitely rooting for our Jets this weekend, but if we miss the playoffs, I could see Woody insisting someone having to pay for it. I'm thinking it would be LaFleur. Maybe. I think that would be a mistake. I think that would be way too reactionary. I think this team and this staff should grow together. They already overachieved this year. Obviously, the last 4 games have the losing streak has been pretty brutal. And I get after the hot start, you're 5-2, 6-3. You want to make the playoffs. And obviously, I thought they absolutely should have made the playoffs and still think they can. But I think that would be way too reactionary. But I guess maybe you can't put that past a guy like Woody Johnson. Jeffrey Michael has a trade proposal in the chat. He says, what are your thoughts on Carr and Adams for Zach Wilson, 2 firsts, 2 thirds, and 1 of Michael Carter II or Elijah Moore? That's a lot to give up. I think that's a little too rich for my blood, because that would be 2 very, very big contracts. So I would say probably no. Older than dirt Jets fan, aka Walt, says they're not going to fire Salah or LaFleur after taking a 2-win team from the previous regime in the possibility of the playoffs. The report sounds like Washington Post report sounds like clickbait. I agree. I don't put much stock into it at all. That was kind of the the overall point to this stream was just, it really does seem like a stretch. I don't buy it at all. Sal is 3-7 versus the Seahawks as an assistant with Houston and San Francisco. Kyle is 5-6 versus the Jets as a head coach, 3-0, and an assistant. Okay, hang on. Kyle is 5-6 versus the Jets as a head coach, 3-0, and assistant 2-6 as an assistant with Buffalo in 84, New England, and San Francisco. I could not read that for whatever reason, Brian. That kind of just broke my brain for a second. Not on you, that's on me. Reading is not a strong suit of mine. Has they really faced the Jets 3 times as a head coach? I guess so. 2020, 2016, and 2012. Yeah, I guess so. This will be the 4th time. Yeah, Green Truth, I agree with you. He says it's a lot to give up because of the money you have to take back. Exactly. That's why I don't think that's the move, unfortunately. I like both those guys, but cap does play a factor in it. BK says if White wins the next 2 games, even if they miss out on the playoffs, he's quarterback 1 next year. Depends on how he play. I mean, he should be in the conversation for it, but could you fault them for trying to get an upgrade at a position that's cost them this year? And not that Mike White has cost them in the games that he's played. The issue with Mike White is it's a small sample size, what you've seen from him. And number 2 is the injury. He's left. How many games has he started? 6 games. I think he's left 4 of his 6 games with injury. He's come back in some of them, but he's gotten hurt or banged up, and that slightly scares me, but who knows? Oreo says, what do you think the Jets will give up if they decide to go for Carr? The Athletic had an article earlier today with the trade package. It really wasn't that much. It was a lot less than you'd probably think. Now, I might think that it's probably going to be a little bit more than the prediction from Zach Rosenblatt. I believe I'm just buying time a second. I want to load the article and get the exact trade proposal. Give me a second here. His trade proposal from the Jets was a 2023 third and a 2024 fourth. I think it would probably be a little bit more than that. I don't know if it's going to be like multiple firsts. Maybe it's 1 first. Maybe it's a second and a third the next year or something like that. But I think the contract has a lot to play into this. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be something crazy costly. Craig says, my prediction, Mike White re-injures ribs in the first quarter. Stravely takes the Jets to the promised land. Ha. Yeah, I would be pretty upset if Mike White gets hurt because I think Joe Flacco would come into the game at that point. As fun as Stravler was, he can't throw the football. He could run around. You could give him a little package maybe, but he's not a serious NFL quarterback. Momo says, hey, Matt, what's with the Mike White injury chatter? Hurt in the Colts game, almost cut in half in the Bills game. What else? Stop with the injury talk. He left the Cincinnati Bengals game, his first game with an injury. He got hurt in the Buffalo Bills game last year. He hurt his finger. That's 2 more times that you are forgetting about, Momo. Yeah, those are 2 off the top of my head, which will get you to 4. Robert says, what about when Carroll was the coach of New England? Good point. That's a good point, Robert. I don't know. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Maybe Brian could tell us. Oreo says, also forgot to ask, but what did Casey receive for Christmas? If the coin we believe in F the coin, we believe in Casey's picks. Yeah, so Casey made out like a bandit. I got her a like a little ball that dispenses treats when you roll it on the floor and like you can knock the treats out of it. She got a bunch of she loves like the plush toys, the stuffed animal kind of things. So we got her some of those. Candy cane treats. She was a big fan of this year. Not exactly candy canes, but it's a dog treat that is shaped and looks like a candy cane. She liked that, so we got her some of those. She made out very well. She had a very Merry Christmas. She's the best. Anthony S says, just my opinion, I'd rather sign Jimmy G than trade for Carr. Okay, that's fair. I think that's a realistic debate and a realistic conversation. I think Carr's better than Jimmy G. But if your argument is just having to pay money versus trading and taking on the contract, I understand that. The narrative around Mike White being injury prone feels off to me. The guy stands in the pocket and delivers strikes. Our offensive line has been anything but inconsistent and can't get a running game. I injury prone. I don't know if I'd go that far, but injuries have played a factor in both of his seasons so far. Let's see if I can get a list of all of his injuries. No, there was a really good site that had it. Was it CBS? No, this is going to probably just be the most recent injuries. Yeah, I'd have to go back and find it, but did he not re-hurt that finger in the Buffalo game? Because he came back and he missed the Miami game, which was after the Colts. And then when he started against the Buffalo Bills, I thought he threw a ball and hit a player's helmet, but maybe I'm wrong. Momo asked if I think we have a shot at Daniel Jones. Maybe. I don't love Daniel Jones. I would hope they go a different direction there. Logan says, I feel the Jets have to go to college ball and use a swap at our quarterbacks every half. Put Mike as a closer and put Strevler as the opener. Don't know. Don't know about that one. I'm going to say probably pass for me. Green Truth says White did not get another chance last year because of the fourth interception. Zach Wilson was waiting in the wings. Brian says problem is we don't know if Mike White can handle a full season as starter. The repeated injuries have cost the Jets any real evaluation of his abilities. You're doing it off a small sample size. Again, I think he's played well enough to where he's played himself into the conversation, and he is definitely on the table here. I'm not saying this is not me saying that he shouldn't be on the table or he doesn't deserve to. He does. That is something that factors into the equation for me. That's all. JK says, I talked way too much crap to my a-hole Giant fan friends for Daniel Jones to be the Jets quarterback. Yeah, that would be frustrating. I agree. Craig says Jimmy G gets hurt more than White. Let's get Carr. That is another thing that goes into Jimmy G is the injuries. That is a very realistic thing you have to deal with. Hollywood J, is Taylor Heineke an option? He could be, but I would hope that that's not your answer. I don't really think he's all that good, nor do I really think he'd be better than Mike White. Like I'd almost rather just run it back with Mike White than go with that direction. Mr. D says Zach will eventually be a good quarterback given time. Sims and Eli both had fans asking for them to be benched, and now look at them. And now look at Geno, and even Darnold is coming on. Go Jets. Yeah, I look with Zach. I think he very, very much so needs a reset. And I don't think you can go into next year banking on him to be the starter, is what I'll say. It's not that he is 1,000% done for his NFL career. I don't know that to be the case, but he's probably someone who could benefit from a fresh start if he were to ever have a chance. Oh, Brian says Carson Wentz coming to the Jets would be the end for me. You would never see me again at a Jets game again. Yeah, that would be a tough one to swallow after everything that's happened with him the last few years and another guy who gets hurt a lot. Sawyer says, if we get Carr, do you think Mike White opts to go somewhere else where he would have a better chance at starting? Potentially. Where else that could be? I guess it's dependent on how the rest of the quarterback carousel shakes out. I think here is probably his best chance to start, but if you go with Carr and you're trading and you're acquiring that contract, are you also going to pay Mike White the $10+ million a year in order to keep him around? I don't know about that. Is that true, Momo? Joe Beningo wants Baker Mayfield? What the WTF? I don't know why people still give him the time of day. I'm over the Baker May. Not over. I'm over the Joe Beningo experience. JK says Mike White seems to just be a cheaper Jimmy G. If you think he is injury prone, why not save the money and boost the team elsewhere? Good point. Oh, good one from Alex. Is Bam taking RB2 spot for Michael Carter next year? I think he could push for it, but I still think Michael Carter is probably going to be RB2. But even if not, if that's still a really deep running back room, if Michael Carter is your RB3, Bam Knight your RB2, and eventually when healthy, you have your guy back there in Brees Hall. Momo says Corey Davis needs to go. I think he will more than likely be cut at the end of this season. Just too many injuries, too many drops. Had some clutch moments for the Jets, but not consistent enough, unfortunately. I have time for a few more in here. Any last minute questions before I hop out for the day? Appreciate you guys hanging with me. Oh, Green Truth says if the Jets don't sign Mike White, I see him starting in Miami. Tua is done due to injury. Beningo does want Baker. Oh, God. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that could be true. I worry about Lamar to Miami. I just feel like that's one that's been a connection for a while now. But I think more than likely than not, they don't let him shake loose. But if he was to force his way out, I could see him trying to get to Miami. Logan says, would it be a bad gamble to bring in Colin Kaepernick on a prove-it deal? He's just been out of the league for way too long, man. I'm not saying it's right for why he was out of the league, but at this point, when was the last time he was in the NFL? 2016? That's a long time ago. That's going to be 7 years ago next year. Kenny Sawyer says, Sam Darnold is finally looking legit for Carolina. I would keep Zach for third string. Yeah, if he's under contract, there's no reason to move him at his lowest, possible value. So if you want to keep him, fine. If you move on from him, I wouldn't blame you for moving on from him. And it might be more for the player than the actual team itself. But if you keep him around, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. Soviet Man says Miami has no first round picks. And apparently they don't have a ton of cap space. So maybe that's not the option. Maybe that's not the option. Maybe I don't have to worry about Miami. All right. Thank you for the info, chat. JK says if the Panthers were playing on primetime and Sam played well, Joe B would be screaming for the Jets to get Sam back, even though he hated the guy when he was here. Bro, they should have never let him go, bro. That's exactly what it would be. Mom says, what would your pick be at quarterback next year? I think we have to see what happens from White over the next 2 games. If he is the guy, maybe the quarterback room is Mike White and Zach Wilson with another cheap veteran brought in the mix. Not Joe Flacco, but like Jacoby Brissett or Case Keenum kind of guy. And you roll with that. Of the free agent / more realistic options, I think Carr is my favorite of that group. Not opposed to Aaron Rodgers. Don't want Tom Brady. But we still got a ways to go before we get to that point. JK says, I always liked him, bro. That's great. Boy. All right. That's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Reminder, Underdog Fantasy. Thank you to sponsoring the show. Promo code Matt. Link is down below in the description of this video. Sign up, play your daily fantasy there. It's a ton of fun. I love the head-to-heads. I'm going to get in on some head-to-heads this week for fantasy football. So that's it. I'm Matt O'Leary. Thanks